Alright, time to do some plug wiring this morning. I'm not ashamed to admit that after getting all set up last night and doing a little testing, I had a little trouble sleeping last night. I was kind of excited about getting this done. I don't know what that says about me, but it's probably nothing too good. So, like I mentioned, I did do some trial and error, and you don't see that in some of these videos, I guess, what you find on YouTube, but I screwed some stuff up last night, figured out how to fix it, and I think I can get these plugs together pretty straightforward today. You can see I've set up a little workspace for myself. I've got my wires here, which I'll need a little bit of over here on the right. I have the right hand grip switch and the brake line all cut and already stripped and trimmed. I have my plug assembly. That's a 6-pin connector, but I only need 4 connectors for today's plug. I've got the ignition switch, which I'll deal with later today. Wire strippers, and these are actually not the correct crimpers for this type of work, but it seems to be working okay, and it's all I could find in my town. I've got my ferrule crimpers in case I need them, and a spade clipper, insulated connector crimper, and a voltmeter because I like to test my connections as I go. Then some electrical tape, you never know why. A set of heat shrink, my heat shrink gun, and my vise, just for ease of use. And I've also got a soldering iron set up with some solder. Now, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but I have decided that I'm going to solder these connections in addition to crimping them. I just hate troubleshooting electrical faults, and it seemed like it made some sense. So you can see down here, I've got 4 male pins, the 4 female pins, a spade connector, which I'll explain in a bit. I'm not sure I'm actually going to use it, and the little weatherproof grommets. So that's my starting point today. I also decided to put a little piece of cardboard down that I just nailed into my bench just so I'd have a nice clean workspace to work on. My bench has seen better days. So I'm going to set up. We're going to put this connector series together, and just for handy dandy reference, up here on the wall I've got my wiring diagram and my pinout list, or my wire schedule, so that you can see as I'm going. I'm already making some corrections to either errors I've found, or I've numbered the wires with some wire markers so I can trace them again in the future. So I'm marking that down as well. Alright, just to give you a closer look at these connectors here, you've got a couple features. This first set of nibs right there, that is for locking the connector into the plug. They should not get bent down. The second set here, this short set, that is what actually crimps down on the stripped wire and gives you your electrical connection. And this third set crimps down on the insulation. I've seen some folks trim those a little bit because they do seem to be a little bit long. I may try that today just to see how that goes. So that's the male side, because it's got the long formed plug here. The female side is identical, except it's got a shorter end that the long male plug plugs into. Now the process is to strip the wire down. That might be a little bit long, but about 3/8 of an inch. Don't forget to slide your weatherproof grommet on first. I forgot that several times last night. Then what I seem to have some success doing is crimp on the wire, the bare exposed wire first, then the insulation, and then I add a little bit of solder. So I'm going to try that, We're going to see how that works today. I should also mention one other key piece of hardware for me these days. Some good magnifiers. No shame in being able to see your work, unless people see you in them. Okay, I've decided that I'll start with this blue with the yellow tracer. And from my wiring diagram, the blue with the yellow tracer is the start button, at least one half of the start button. So that goes on the plug side, the male side of the plug, I guess I should say. So I'm going to slide that in here. And well, my wires are not as neat as I'd like them to be. So I'm going to slide them in here. And maybe you can see that I've got the insulation beyond these longer ferrules, and then the bare wire at the shorter ones up to there. I'll take these crimpers and using this area, I'm actually going to flip these so that the open side faces the negative portion of the jaw and the positive side faces the positive portion of the jaw. Kind of careful in here, run them up to against those longer ferrules right in there, and then do our first crimp. Which looks like that. Then I've just been kind of starting these by hand so that they'll fold the way that I want them to fold. And then we'll repeat the same procedure for this. Alright, now we've got those crimped in. We've got a good connection, I think. And here's my overkill. I'm going to add some solder. I've just been using my pliers as a little bit of a, my crimpers as a bit of a holder here. My soldering iron's already hot. Definitely want to limit the amount of heat I put into this. Alright, so I have a solder joint. And in an unsurprising clever twist, I did forget to put this on. So, luckily, it can still be done. You just kind of have to work it around a little bit. So I got to do that. All right. And repeat. So just for illustrative purposes, here's a little bit better close-up. You can see the crimp joints. You can see that those first tabs are still extended. I seem to have a pretty good crimp on the wire. I think it's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I think that'll get us what we need. Okay, so here we have 3 of the 4 connections done, and I got to sit here and think about the the fourth one we're going to do for a second. So these two wires are independent of my switch gear. This is the brake switch. So one side goes to the MotoGadget unit, the other side is going to go to a common ground. On this side we have the one side of the kill switch. The other side of the kill switch will go to ground. That's this green. Then the brown and yellow I'll get to. So the blue and yellow right here is the clutch. Now what we have to do, no, that's not right. Yeah, the brown and yellow is the start ground, and we have to send that over to the clutch. So that's actually going to be a spade connector. The only thing I have handy right now is this and this. I think I'm going to hold off wiring this and just twist it. I'm going to go to the auto parts store, and they open today. So that's going to go to the clutch switch in series so that both the clutch and the starter have to be pressed in order to start the motorcycle. And then this is the ground for these two are both going to the ground circuit. So this is green and black, and according to my sheet here, yeah, the green and black goes to the ground. So since both these are on the right hand grip, I'm going to tie these together and then ground the circuit on one pin. It just saves a pin and makes things a little cleaner. So I'm going to take a minute to figure that out. Okay, now we can install the plugs or the fittings into the plug body. And the order doesn't really matter too much as long as we keep it straight, but the way I have it on my drawing is first the green and blue for the kill switch, then the blue and yellow for the start switch, then the green and red for the front brake switch, and then my two combined grounds. So I combined the grounds, I soldered that connection up in here, put some heat shrink on it to keep it all safe. So that should be a pretty reliable connection. Now I don't think I've quite figured out how far up to slip these grommets, but it seems to be just a little bit beyond where the ferrule ends. So I'll get those pretty well positioned. Now of course these the plug came with no instructions at all, so I did a little YouTubing to try to figure it out. They're definitely unidirectional. They only go in one way. So we'll start with the green and blue just in one corner. So it looks like, probably can't see this, but there are some locking tabs in there. Right now they're facing the top of the plug, and they seem to clip into this feature right here. So once they lock in, they shouldn't be able to push back out. So that's how we want to align these in here. Push those in. You can hear a little click. You can see that my grommet probably wasn't up far enough. So I'll push the next one up a little farther. But you can see that it did go in a good distance. So I think we're okay there. Number 2 is the blue and yellow. Here, a little click. Again, not far enough. They overlap the grommet a little bit. Oh, that's upside down. Just going to want to go that way. Click. That's a little better. So let me try that again. There, I've got I'm overlapping the grommet just a little bit. And I'll put that, my wire lengths could have probably been a little better. It's also upside down. Put that right here. And click. Okay. See if I can maybe shove these in just a little bit without damaging too much. Which would be probably pretty typical, right? Try to make things a little bit better, make it a little worse, whether we're over tightening a fastener and snapping it off or whatever. Okay, so I got my 4 connections in there. Again, this one is going to go to the clutch switch. It's on the other side of the bike, from the left handlebar. Got my 4 connectors in there, which can't really see in this light. And so then I've got the plug side. So what I had decided was that the inputs would be blue and the ground would be green. So what I'm going to need is 3 lengths of blue for my input wires and then a length of green for my ground. So that's what I'm going to start cutting right now. Okay, well overall with that, those 4 connectors went pretty well. At the very beginning I messed one up, so I just abandoned it, got another connector out of the box, or out of the bag. I'm sure that will bite me later, but I'd rather have I bought a couple extra connectors, so I should be okay. I also managed to, even though I put the grommets on ahead of time so I wouldn't mess it up, I still messed one up. And you may have noticed that I decided to try cutting the ferrules or the tabs that clamp on the connector a little bit, and that did seem to make the crimp go a little better. And instead of crimping the uninsulated portion first, I crimped the insulated portion first, and that also seemed to work pretty well. So who knows? Trial and error all the way through this project, so why not right now too? Now, when we put these together into the plug body, we need to make sure that they're matching up because the plug is keyed. So this is going to go in this way and only that way, which is great because you can't mess it up once it's on the bike. But while you're wiring it, you can mess it up, which I may or may not have done last night and had to fix. So today it's pretty easy though, because the first 3 wires on the top are all just input wires. So I can just input those anywhere as long as I put them in this top or bottom row in this configuration, but this row right here. And then the ground is standalone down here at the bottom, so the ground's going to go right there. Still don't put it past myself messing this up, but all right, blue on these top 3 right here. So I'm going to keep that oriented. Get this other piece out of my way. And again, these are unidirectional. There is a little landing spot down here that will match with the tab right there. So that means that the tab's on the top side, the opening needs to be on the top side, and I can just insert that in, plug to click, and that grommet has actually seated pretty well. Okay, number 2 blue. Click. Number 3 blue. No click. Why am I not clicking? Had a little issue last night with this once or twice, and maybe I got carried away with the solder or something. See if I can maybe compress this down a little bit. I don't know. A little trial and error here. I guess it's possible that the plug body's not right, but it does look like it's got that landing tab in there. Although it might be a little hung up. It's hard to tell. And I'm installing it the right direction. Looks like it is just not going in quite far enough. What could be holding it? Got a little bit of solder overlap down there. Now I can see the plug moving, or the clip moving, so I'm just not inserting quite far enough. Don't see anything else odd inside the plug. So what could be keeping it? I'll tell you what, let's do a little comparison here. Sure looks pretty similar there. Not that we've plugged this successfully in yet, so may not be telling us anything. The landing spot looks about the same. The ends of the plugs look about the same. This actually looks like it's caved in a little bit. Or maybe that's caved out a little bit, but that looks better. Let me try this green one. Which should go. Better double check this. Yeah, it's down here. Under here. So let's see. Yep, click. So what's up with Mr. Not Click? I just want to redo that connector. click. I think I had a little solder out of it in the way. Okay. So while we're here, let's go ahead and number these. So I've used numbers 1 to 6 so far. I have a handy dandy numbering pad here. Really doesn't matter what we number them as long as we're consistent end to end. So let's call this one 7. Now what I do want to do is mark this on my wiring schematic. So we have 7, then 8, nine. Very handy that they have the line under the 9 so you don't get your 9s and 6s mixed up. And 10 will be our ground. Now, flip to the next page. And it's critical that we label the other side the same. So that's my 7. That's my 7. Still my 7. And that's my 7. Seven and 7. This is my 8. And my 8. My 9. And my 9. And the 10 should be easy. It's the only green one on this plug. And 10. Get that out of the way. And before I forget, let's verify where these are connected, and let's get my diagram on the wall marked. So green and blue is number 9. And of course my pen's not on me. Alright, so green and blue on number 2 we said was 9, which is our kill switch. Just going to write that in the column there. Number 8 was our blue and yellow, which is our start. Number 7 is our green and brown. Sorry, green and red. Which is our front brake, 7 there. And then the grounds were both 10, so there's actually 2 10s here. 10 there, 10 there. Alright. So next up is to get this temporarily wired on the bike, and we'll go from there.